afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Black Diamond Public School, Badi Kotona, Jamui, Bihar. Today's in-house training session. I am Shikha Raj. The topic is presenting here. The topic: Happy teacher makes happy classroom.
आराम से
A happy teacher makes a happy. First of all, I am going to discuss what is happiness. So basically, happiness is the fundamental objective of all human effort and activity in all cultures and societies. The study of happiness has long been under the purview of philosophical speculation. Basically, there were no proper empirical measures of happiness, which made it an area of speculation and uncertainties. Researchers, psychologists, however, in recent years, with the development of reliable and valid measures or questionnaires of happiness, helped to make significant evolution of the knowledge in the field of happiness and positive psychology. Now it is increasingly becoming a stated policy goal of world governments with the gross national happiness of the country rather than its gross domestic product GDP as the primary quantity to be maximized. Professor like at Denier defined subjective well-being, also known as happiness, as subjective well-being satisfaction with life plus effect. Subjective well-being equal to high positive emotion plus low negative equal to high positive emotion plus low negative emotion plus high life satisfaction. A happy person is someone who is frequently cheerful, only occasionally sad, and generally satisfied with his or her life. Now, the topic is discover what makes you happy. Every teacher must know about herself or himself. Self-awareness is important because when we have a better understanding of ourselves, we can experience ourselves as unique and separate individuals. We are then empowered to make changes and to build on our areas of strength as well as identify areas where we would like to make improvements. Like we can make a list of things that makes you happy and share it with your colleagues and students so that they know, support and understand you well. Now identify your positive and negative emotions. Do your work on your emotions. An emotionally intelligent teacher can create a happy environment in the classroom. How can you become a happy teacher? The question is this. We can answer this question like studies show that highly extroverted people, that is who are more socially outgoing and exhibit more sensitivity to rewards, tend to experience higher levels of positive emotions such as joy and enthusiasm even when they are alone. On the other hand, introverted people are prone to experiencing more anxiety, guilt and depression. Every teacher must work on his or her personality traits that make them a happy teacher. Extrovert teachers make a happy classroom. They can develop this trait in students also and making a vibrant environment of learning. Now here we understand a graph like self-awareness. There are two types, social awareness and self-management. Happiness is all about how you manage yourself and your relationship with your fellow teachers and students. Now a question arises that what are the essentials for a happy classroom? A happy classroom cannot be built in a day. It needs sustainable and continuous efforts by all stakeholders. Management and teachers should understand that a happy staff room is essential for a happy classroom. The second point is practice mindfulness in the classroom. Mindfulness interventions can help students reduce their stress and anxiety and create positive emotions. Teach students kindness and forgiveness. The best way to spread kindness is to be kind yourself. Teachers who use kind words are polite, respectful, patient, and well mannered have students who emulate them. We at school must emphasize and practice empathy and compassion at all levels, which will help us to feel what another is experiencing and can be incredibly helpful on the path to forgiveness leading to happiness. Develop a classroom environment to foster creativity, openness, and respect for all. Another question arises is that how happiness in the classroom enhances the teaching learning process. We can answer this question like this: happier students work better, healthier, do well in assessments, and are generally more successful. School leaders, parents, and you, if thinking focusing on student happiness detract from serious learning, all could be wrong. The evidence also shows that schools that work on developing student well-being not only have happier students but that they do better academically and their behavior improves at the same time. Researchers have proved that children don't learn when they are under stress, they are fearful in the class, and they are not having fun in school. Let's together make the world happier and start it from the classrooms. Now I am going to describe further this topic as classroom management. Like classroom management is a term teachers use to describe the process of ensuring that classroom lessons run smoothly without disruptive behavior from students compromising the delivery of instruction. The term also implies the prevention of disruptive behavior preemptively as well as effectively responding to it after it happens. It is a difficult aspect of teaching for many teachers. Problems in this area causes some to leave teaching. In 1981, the US National Educational Association reported that 36% of teachers said they would probably not to go into teaching if they had to decide again. A major reason was negative student attitudes and discipline. Classroom management is crucial in classrooms because it supports the proper execution of curriculum development, developing best teaching practices and putting them into action. Classroom management can be explained as the actions and directions that teachers use to create a successful learning environment. Indeed, having a positive impact on students, achieving given learning requirements and goals. In an effort to ensure all students receive the best education, it would seem beneficial for educator programs to spend more time and effort in ensuring educators and instructors are well versed in classroom management. Teachers do not focus on learning classroom management because higher education programs do not put an emphasis on the teacher attaining classroom management. Indeed, the focus is on creating a conducive learning atmosphere for the students. These all tools enable teachers to have the resources available to properly and successfully educate upcoming generations and at the same time ensure future successes as a nation. According to Moskowitz and Heyman, once a teacher loses control of their classroom, it becomes increasingly more difficult for them to regain that control. Also, research from Berliner and Gropi and Good shows that the time a teacher must take to correct misbehavior caused by poor classroom management skills results in a lower rate of academic engagement in the classroom. From the student's perspective, effective classroom management involves clear communication of behavioral and academic expectations as well as a cooperative learning environment. Now we are going to discuss about some techniques. The first one is corporal punishment. Until recently, corporal punishment was widely used as a means of controlling disruptive behavior, but it is now illegal in most schools. It is still advocated in some contexts by religious leaders such as James Dobson, but his views diverge sharply from those recommended by contemporary mainstream experts and are not based on empirical testing, but rather are a reflection of his faith-based beliefs. According to studies, taboo physical punishments like spanking or procedures used in Asia in the classroom, such as standing, do not make students or children more aggressive. Consistency seems to play a greater role on whether outcomes could be negative. Corporal punishment is now banned in most schools in the United States and in most developed countries. Although its effectiveness was never proven, the punishment was very disproportionately met. African American males were the most punished group. In a study conducted in 2006, 17.1% of students who experienced corporal punishment were African Americans and 78.3% of total students were males. The second topic is good teacher-student relationships. Some characteristics of having good teacher-student relationships in the classroom involves the appropriate levels of dominance, cooperation, professionalism, and awareness of high needs students. Dominance is defined as the teacher's ability to give clear purpose and guidance concerning student behavior and their academics. By creating clear expectations and consequences for student behavior, this builds effective relationships. Such expectations may cover classroom etiquette and behavior, group work, seating arrangements, and the use of equipment and materials, and also classroom disruptions. These expectations should always be enforced with consistency among all students within the class. Inconsistency is viewed by students as unfair and will result in the students having less respect for the teacher. Assertive teacher behavior also reassures those thoughts and messages are being passed on to the student in an effective way. Assertive behavior can be achieved by using erect posture, appropriate tone of voice depending on the current situation, and taking care not to ignore inappropriate behavior by taking action. Another great strategy to build a good teacher-student relationship is using inclusive pronouns. For example, if a class is misbehaving and are getting off track, instead of saying you need to get back to work, a teacher may say we have got a lot of work to do today, so let's get back to it. Another technique to establishing good teacher-student relationships is William Burke's 3 pluses and a wish. These pluses are complimenting that the teacher gives to the student before making a request. The pluses help the student get into a mindset that is more likely to cooperate with the teacher. An example might look like this. Thanks so much for your participation in class today. I love hearing your comments. I think you provided a fair amount of educational insight to the discussion. I would appreciate if you could raise your hand before commenting so that other students can follow your example. Next technique is preventing techniques. Preventive approaches to classroom management involve creating a positive classroom community with mutual respect between teacher and student. Teachers using the preventive approach offer warmth, acceptance and support unconditionally, not based on a student's behavior. Fair rules and consequences are established and students are given frequent and consistent feedback regarding their behavior. One way to establish this kind of classroom environment is through the development and use of a classroom contract. The contract should be created by both students and the teacher. In the contract, students and teachers decide and agree on how to treat one another in the classroom. The group also decides on and agrees to what the group will do if someone violates the contract. Rather than a consequence, the group should decide how to fix the problem through either class discussion, peer mediation, counseling, or by one-on-one conversations leading to a solution to the situation. Preventive techniques also involve the strategic use of praise and rewards to inform students about their behavior rather than as a means of controlling student behavior. To use rewards to inform students about their behavior, teachers must emphasize the value of the behavior and is rewarded, and also explain to students the specific skills they demonstrated to earn the reward. Teachers should also encourage student collaboration in selecting rewards and defining appropriate behaviors that earn rewards. This form of praise and positive reinforcement is very effective in helping students understand expectations and builds a student's self-concept. An often overlooked preventative technique is to overplan. students tend to fill in the awkward pauses or silences in the class. When teachers overplan, they have plenty of material and activities to fill the class time, thus reducing opportunities for students to have time to misbehave. Transition time can be an opportunity for students to be disruptive. To minimize this, transitions need to be less than 30 seconds. The teacher must be prepared and organized, as well as students being prepared and organized for a day of learning. An organizational routine must be implemented at the beginning of the year and reinforced daily until it is instinctive. The next subtopic is the blue versus orange card theory. What is this theory? Let's get to know about this. The blue card versus orange card theory was introduced by William Turkey, which suggests that students need supportive, encouraging statements to feel valuable, able, and responsible. Many messages are soothing, encouraging, and supportive. These messages are blue cards. They encourage a positive self-concept. Other messages are critical, discouraging, demeaning. These cards are orange, the international color of distress. The goal is to fill the student's file box with more blue cards than orange cards to help with students' perspective of learning. Next subtopic is rote discipline. It is also known as lines. Rote discipline is a sanction used for behavior management. It involves assigning a disorderly student sentence or the classroom rules to write repeatedly. Next is high cards and low cards. What is this? Let's learn about this. An intervention technique created by William Turkey, used by the teacher, that gives students the level of management needed. Low cards are a less invasive intervention to address what is happening. Some examples of a low card intervention are raising the eyebrows, staring politely at the student, moving closer to the student while continually talking, calling student by name and asking if they are listening. High cards are a strong intervention to address what is happening. Some examples include sending student to the principal's office, keeping student after school, calling home, etc. Now we are going to learn about systematic approaches. Point number 1, or we can say that subtopic number 1 is assertive discipline. Assertive discipline is an approach designed to assist educators in running a teacher in charge classroom environment. Assertive teachers react to situations that require the management of student behavior confidently. Assertive teachers do not use an abrasive, sarcastic, or hostile tone when disciplining students. Actually, assertive discipline is one of the most widely used classroom management tactics in the world. It demands student compliance and requires teachers to be firm. This method draws a clear line between aggressive discipline and assertive discipline. The standards and rules set in place by assertive discipline are supported by positive reinforcement as well as negative consequences. Teachers using this approach carry themselves confidently and have no tolerance for class disruption. They are not timid and remain consistent and just. Next is constructivist and discipline. What is constructivist? Actually, a constructivist student-centered approach to classroom management is based on the assignment of tasks in response to student disruption that are number 1 easy for the student to perform, number 2 developmentally enriching, number 3 progressive so teacher can up the ante of needed, number 4 based on students' interests, number 5 designed to allow the teacher to stay in charge, and number 6 foster creativity and play in the classroom. Compliance rests on assigning disciplinary tasks that the student will want to do in concert with the teacher, rapidly assigning more of the tasks if the student does not initially comply. Once the student complies, the role of the teacher as the person in charge, that is in loco parentis, has been re-established peacefully, creatively, and with respect for students' needs. Claimed benefits include increased student trust and long-term emotional benefits from the modeling of creative solutions to difficulties without resorting to a threat of violence or force. Next is culturally responsive classroom management. Let's learn about this. Culturally responsive classroom management is an approach to running classrooms with all children in a culturally responsive way. More than a set of strategies or practices, CRCM is a pedagogical approach that guides the management decisions that teachers make. It is a natural extension of culturally responsive teaching, which uses students' backgrounds, rendering of social experiences, prior knowledge, and learning styles in daily lessons. Teachers, as culturally responsive classroom managers, recognize their biases and values and reflect how these influence their expectations for behavior and their interactions with students, as well as what learning looks like. There is extensive research on traditional classroom management and a myriad of resources available on how to deal with behavior issues. Conversely, there is little research on CRCM, despite the fact that teachers who lack cultural competence often experience problems in this area. Next subtopic is discipline without stress and punishments or rewards. Discipline without stress is a K-12 discipline and learning approach developed by Marvin Marshall, described in his 2001 book Discipline Without Stress, Punishments or Rewards. The approach is designed to educate young people about the value of internal motivation. The intention is to prompt and develop within youth a desire to become responsible and self-disciplined and to put forth effort to learn. The most significant characteristics of DWS that it is totally non-coercive and takes the opposite approach to Skinnerian behaviorism that relies on external sources for reinforcement. According to Marvin Marshall's book, there are three principles to practice. The first is positivity, where he explains that teachers should be practicing changing negatives into positives. No running becomes we walk in the hallways. Stop talking becomes this is quiet time. The second principle, as described by Marvin Marshall, is choice, by which he says choice response thinking is taught, as well as impulse control. So students are not victims of their own impulses. The third principle is reflection and is explained as a person can only control another person temporarily, and because no one can actually change another person. Asking reflective questions is the most effective approach for actuating change in others. Next subtopic is provide flexible learning goals. Let's discuss about this. Instructors can demonstrate a suitable level of strength by giving clear learning objectives. They can also pass on fitting levels of participation by giving learning objectives that can be changed based on the class's needs. Allowing students to participate in their own learning goals and outcomes at the start of a unit brings a sense of cooperation and mutual understanding between the instructor and student. One way of involving the students and in turn making them feel heard in the decision making of the class is by asking what topics they would find most intriguing in learning based on a guided rubric. This approach will engage and send a message to the students that the teacher is interested in the students' interests. The student in turn will bring greater learning outcomes as well as a mutual respect. Posting appropriate learning objectives where the students can see them and refer to them is vital in carrying out the objectives. Make learning goals clear and not a mystery. Students who do not know what the teacher wants them to do are unlikely to learn the material and understand what is being taught. When the teacher also clearly knows the goal, the lesson will progress more smoothly and they can work every student toward that central goal. Our next subtopic is the good behavior game. What is the good behavior game? Let's discuss about it. The good behavior game is a classroom level approach to behavior management that was originally used in 1969 by British Saunders and Wolf. The game entails the class in earning access to a reward or losing a reward given that all members of the class engage in some type of behavior or did not exceed a certain amount of undesired behavior. It can be used to increase desired behaviors, example question asking, or to decrease undesired behaviors, example out of seat behavior. This has been used with preschoolers as well as adolescents. However, most applications have been used with typically developing students like those without developmental disabilities. In addition to this, the game is usually popular with and acceptable to students and teachers. The next subtopic is positive classrooms. Robert DiGiulio has developed what he calls positive classrooms. He sees positive classroom management as the result of four factors: how teachers regard their students, how they set up the classroom environment, and how skillfully they teach content, and how well they address student behavior. In positive classrooms, student participation and collaboration are encouraged in a safe environment that has been created. A positive classroom environment can be encouraged by being consistent with expectations, using students' names, providing choices when possible, and having an overall trust in students. So, as educators, we have daily opportunities to help students grow confidence and feel good about themselves, despite all the negativity that may be around them within their households. Through such actions as boosting their self-esteem through praise, helping them work through any feelings of alienation, depression, and anger, and helping them realize and honor their intrinsic worth as human beings, may result in better behavior in the long line jeopardy of the students. The next subtopic is praise in the classroom. Let's discuss about this. Using behavior specific praise in the classroom can have many positive effects on the students and classroom management. Behavior specific praise is when the teacher praises the student for the exact behavior that the student is exhibiting. Like the student might normally have trouble staying in his seat, and that would cause disruption in the classroom. When the student is staying in his or her seat, the teacher might say that they are proud of the way the student is staying in his or her seat, and would tell the student how they feel. This would help the student feel validated for a positive behavior and would increase the likelihood of the positive behavior happening again. This is called praise in the classroom. Our next topic is as a process. Our next subtopic is as a process. So let's discuss about this. In the Handbook of Classroom Management, Research, Practice and Contemporary Issues, Evertson and Weinstein characterize classroom management as the actions taken to create an environment that supports and facilitates academic and social emotional learning. Toward this goal, teachers must do: number 1, develop caring, supportive relationships with and among students. Number 2, organize and implement instruction in ways that optimize students' access to learning. Number 3, use group management methods that encourage students' engagement in academic tasks. Number 4, promote the development of students' social skills and self-regulation. Number 5, use appropriate intervention to assist students with behavior problems. So all these teachers must do. Our next subtopic is as time management. In their introductory text on teaching, Kochak and again explain classroom management in terms of time management. The goal of classroom management Kauchak and again is to not only maintain order but to optimize student learning. They divide class time into four overlapping categories named allocated time, instructional time, engaged time, and academic learning time. So let's discuss one by one all these. First is academic learning time. Academic learning time occurs when students participate actively and are successful in learning activities. Effective classroom management maximizes academic learning time. Next is allocated time. Allocated time is the total time allotted for teaching, learning, routine classroom procedures, checking attendance, and posting or delivering announcements. Allocated time is actually also what appears on each student's schedule. For example, introductory algebra 9:50 to 10:30 am or fine arts 1:15 to 2 pm. Next is engaged time. Engaged time is also called time on task. During engaged time, students are participating actively in learning activities, asking and responding to questions, completing worksheets and exercises, preparing skits and presentations, etc. This is an important part of the school day because when students are engaged, they are learning. Next is instructional time. Instructional time is what remains after routine classroom procedures are completed. That is to say, instructional time is the time wherein teaching and learning actually takes place. Teachers may spend 2 or 3 minutes taking attendance, for example, before their instruction begins. The time it takes for the teacher to do routine tasks can severely limit classroom instruction. Teachers must get a handle on classroom management to be effective. The next subtopic is common mistakes. So let's discuss this. In an effort to maintain order in the classroom, sometimes teachers can actually make the problems worse. Therefore, it is important to consider some of the basic mistakes commonly made when implementing classroom behavior management strategies. For example, a common mistake made by teachers is to define the problem behavior by how it looks without considering its function. Interventions are more likely to be effective when they are individualized to address the specific function of the problem behavior. Two students with similar looking misbehavior may require entirely different intervention strategies if the behaviors are serving different functions. Teachers need to understand that they need to be able to change the ways they do things from year to year as the children change. Not if every approach works for every child. Teachers need to learn to be flexible. Another common mistake is for the teacher to become increasingly frustrated and negative when an approach is not working. The teacher may raise his or her voice or increase adverse consequences in an effort to make the approach work. This type of interaction may impair the teacher-student relationship. Instead of allowing this to happen, it is often better to simply try a new approach. Inconsistency in expectations and consequences is an additional mistake that can lead to dysfunction in the classroom. Teachers must be consistent in their expectations and consequences to help ensure that students understand that rules will be enforced. To avoid this, teachers should communicate expectations to students clearly and be sufficiently committed to the classroom management procedures to enforce them consistently. Ignoring and approving is an effective classroom management strategy. This involves ignoring students when they behave undesirably and approving their behavior when it is desirable. When students are praised for their good behavior but ignored for their bad behavior, this may increase the frequency of good behavior and decrease bad behavior. Student behavior may be maintained by attention. If students have a history of getting attention after misbehavior, they may continue this behavior as long as it continues to get attention. If student misbehavior is ignored but good behavior results in attention, students may instead behave appropriately to acquire attention. Now I am going to discuss about happiness curriculum. So let's start this topic. Happiness curriculum is an educational program for children studying in nursery to grade 8 in schools run by the Government of Delhi since July 2018. The objective is to improve the mental well-being of pupils, and it teaches mindfulness, social emotional learning, critical thinking, problem solving, and relationship building. Its purpose is to build emotional awareness to support decision making with that emotional awareness, to equip pupils with the necessary skills and environment to become purpose driven and explore a nuanced idea of happiness. The introduction of the curriculum into government schools of Delhi has been called a reformative step towards school education in India. The idea for the curriculum was laid out by Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, who is also the Education Minister of the state, Manish Sisodia. It was developed with the help of government experts and the State Council of Educational Research and Training. The curriculum is mostly based on the happiness triad concept of philosopher Agrahar Nagaraj Sarman. Taking inspiration from the curriculum, Indian states Andhra Pradesh and Uttarakhand and Afghanistan, Nepal and the United Arab Emirates are preparing to implement similar programs. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic and a subsequent nationwide lockdown in India, the curriculum is being delivered to pupils and their parents via interactive voice response calls and live YouTube classes. Now discuss about background and inception. The idea of introducing a curriculum that addresses challenges of modern society and developed by the Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi in 2017. This curriculum was later named the Happiness Curriculum. A team of 40 professionals includes teachers from Government of Delhi schools, psychologists, education consultants, volunteers and the State Council of Educational Research and Training. This also included senior officials from the Directorate of Education, Government of Delhi and people from various NGOs. The curriculum was launched on 2 July 2018. The launch ceremony was attended by the 14th Dalai Lama and the Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal. School officials and teachers from more than 1,000 public schools across Delhi were present at the launch. Dream a Dream, a non-governmental organization, anchored the curriculum in collaboration with other NGOs like Abhivahak Vidyalay, Circle of Life, Blue Orb Foundation and Lavya Foundation, As an anchor, Dream a Dream supported in content development of the curriculum, engaged and provided capacity building sessions for mentor teachers, and helped in developing an assessment tool to measure the implementation and impact of the curriculum on students and teachers. Now let's discuss about framework. The curriculum is based on philosophies of thinkers and educationists such as Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore and Hindu Krishnamurti. It is primarily based on the concept of happiness triad proposed by philosopher Agrahar Nagaraj Sarman, according to which there are three components of happiness: momentary happiness, long-term happiness and sustainable happiness. It is also based on Nagaraj's concept of coexistential thought, which is about simplicity, generosity, kindness and benevolence in the pursuit of happiness. The curriculum also includes concepts of self and relationships with family, society and nature. The curriculum is laid out according to the guidelines of the National Curriculum Framework 2005. It is a grade specific curriculum for all pupils from nursery to grade 8 in schools run by the Government of Delhi. Next is guiding questions. The curriculum employs techniques such as mindfulness, reflective storage, interactive activities and expression to equip pupils with the necessary skills and mindsets to answer the following questions. What makes me happy? How can I be an instrument in other people's happiness? Teachers use a manual to help pupils explore these questions, whose aim is to enable them to understand the relationship between their thoughts, emotions and themselves, their families, their environment and the society at large. The learning outcomes of the curriculum are awareness and focus, critical thinking and reflection, social emotional skills and a confident and pleasant personality. Now discuss about syllabus and classroom approach. The Government of Delhi has established a committee with 200 mentors to manage the curriculum's classes in its schools. The curriculum for all the grades is activity based with no formal examination or textual reading material. No grades are given. Assessments are predominantly qualitative. The curriculum's modules are progressive. Pupils explore themes more in depth as they move to higher grades. There are separate activities, storage, expressions, reflective questions and mindfulness activities for each grade from nursery to 8. Lessons include learning to be aware of one's emotions in nursery and understanding the purpose of one's body and one's self in grade 8. What is the impact of the program? Impact. The program is run in over 1,000 Government of Delhi schools. According to Sisodia, mindfulness is practiced by all 16 lakh 1.6 million pupils every day. Many teachers or parents have reported the pupils' interest in academics and their behavior has improved because of the curriculum. Dream a Dream in partnership with Brookings Institution conducted a pilot study in the year 2019 to design an assessment tool for happiness curriculum and published a report. The study was designed to complete the first step toward an evaluation of the program that would provide information to schools, non-government organizations, implementers and government agencies concerning students and teaching adoption of the desired outcomes of the High Court. To understand and assess the impact of the happiness program, the two surveys were developed, one for students and one for teachers. reflecting factors aligned to the happiness curriculum objectives and learning outcomes. For future anticipated use in evaluation studies, the two surveys provided a basis to capture student and teacher functioning on various factors. The report, developed in collaboration with Brookings Institution and Dream reflects: number 1, impact on students, better relationship with teachers, increased participation inside the classroom, and increased focus and mindfulness among students. Number 2, impact on teachers, priorities values over academic success, changing teaching orientation, and increased collaboration among teachers. The next subtopic is reception. The curriculum was praised by several media outlets including Le Monde, World Economic Forum, and NPR, and was called a reformative step towards school education in India. Happiness classes have been visited by several institutional heads, academicians, officials from education departments of other state governments in India and abroad. Versions of the curriculum have been adopted by Indian states Andhra Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Afghanistan, Nepal, and the United Arab Emirates are also preparing to implement similar programs. At the first anniversary celebration of the curriculum in July 2019, the Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, praised it during her visit to India on 25 February 2020. The First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, visited a happiness class at a school run by the Government of India. One of the many designers of the curriculum, working under the name Lavya Foundation, won the Harvard Social Impact Fund competition of 2020. In this session, I think you all got aware about how teachers create happy classroom. So for today, that's all. Thank you so much. Now about this concluding part, I think all the teachers get to know that how they behave with the students and how they teach in the classroom, and they make happy classroom by their teaching. And there are so many ways for a teacher to create happy classrooms with their presence of mind, so that they can create a happy classroom.